Californian. Plus, special guests will stop by with news and health events. Plus, the editors of Be Well and Bakersfield Life magazines will be joining us to give us updates on what we can expect in those publications. Remember, Be Well Live every Wednesday from 10 to 11 o'clock right here on Bakersfield.com. You can also catch us on demand at BeWellMagazine.com.
And now, from the Dignity Health Studio at the Bakersfield Californian, it's time to open up with Dawn and Tina, your favorite pair, on the air.
Welcome everyone to our studio audience, and welcome to everyone around the world that's viewing, Don.
You know, this show is just amazing. We have viewers you tuning in from cities all across California, all over the nation. Tina and I have just come from the National League of Cities Convention in Seattle, Washington, where we got to meet so many of your mayors and city councilors and city clerks and city managers. And
yes,
that was a wonderful experience.
It certainly was, Don. First time in Seattle for me.
Really? Mm-hmm. We got to go to the original Starbucks.
Ooh.
Not much bigger than this little studio right here. That was great down by the waterfront. So,
yeah,
all you Starbucks fans, that was the original.
Mm-hmm.
We have such a program for you. First of all, I'm just going to put our phone number right out there because I think this is one you may want to be calling in on. Our phone number that you can reach us and bring in questions, and we'll ask them right here on the air. It's 395-7386. 395-7386. There it is at the bottom of the screen there. Mm-hmm. So mark that down because, first of all, you are about to hear from a man who comes from a family that has built major things here in Bakersfield, all over California. His name is Mark Pasquini, and his grandfather, come from this astonishing construction background. And we're going to hear from Mark and what his company is doing. I mean, if you want to build a whole city of schools, churches, shopping centers, homes, condos, they do it all. They do it all, and we're going to hear about that.
Wonderful.
And then we're going to hear from a man. There used to be an old show on television called I Led 3 Lives. Oh. This man has led and is leading 3 incredible lives. His first life was as a drug thug.
Ooh.
I mean, he was in prison yeah, the whole experience of what it is in the drug world. And then almost taking the knowledge that he learned how to survive in the streets, the second phase of his life was to become an intelligence operative for our intelligence agencies in the Middle East, in one of the most dangerous circumstances he could possibly put himself in.
Wow.
And he'll be a little bit restricted about what he can say about that,
yes,
but we're going to hear about that. And now he's engaged, he is at the forefront of organic agriculture and the teaching of advanced degrees in theology for ex-cons. I mean, there are ex-cons that know their theology better than most theology professors because they're working on a little farm out here outside of Bakersfield called Rock Hill Farm. Oh. And you're going to learn all about that. And then we've got one of Bakersfield's leading businessmen, Don Coons, here.
Yes.
And Don's is just going to share us some good words for the coming week about discipline. And maybe we could use a lot of discipline coming up on Thanksgiving and all the food. So,
yes.
Ready to begin?
Oh, yes, Don, I am ready. So,
well, here's Mark Pasquini. Mark, thank you for coming. Mark is sponsoring this show. I need to be open disclosure. Mark and I are friends. I do advertisements for him in other media, but I have grown to so respect Mark. And Mark, you know, how do you? Well, first of all, just your family background in construction that brought you to where you are.
Well, like you said, my
and come right up on that microphone. They tell us that if we're far back, we sound far away, so we got to get right up there.
I'll come closer.
There it is.
My grandfather and father both came from Italy, high into the construction industry. My dad worked for an architect since right after the Korean War all the way up until he passed away. Ended up with Colombo Construction here in town. And then I went on to get my engineering degree and have started my own business here in town, and we do, like you say, a lot of different projects, just from the smallest little things to pretty good sized projects. So.
You mentioned the Korean War. Does any family member have the? Are they veterans?
Yeah, my dad was a veteran.
Oh,
He
nice.
served in the Korean War.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
Then, when he came out, he went to work for a local architecture firm here in town and did a lot of schools, hospitals, and that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
So,
See if I've got this right. Didn't one of your ancestors says work on the Kern County Courthouse? Tell us about some
well, that
of the
was my
major
dad.
projects.
Well, his projects. I mean, he worked on. Through the 50s, 60s, and even the 70s, a lot of projects, the courthouse, a lot of the schools here in town, hospitals, San Joaquin Hospital. I remember when I was a kid growing up, that was a big project for him. And then, like I say, about the mid-'80s, he went to work for Colombo Construction, was instrumental with their construction of a lot of the schools here in town as well.
So, what kind of background do you have other than the engineering?
I got my degree from San Diego State.
Okay.
And went to work for about 3 different firms before starting my own practice. And then we have done a lot of, primarily originally focusing on residential and commercial work. And then we've branched into a little industrial and had some projects, all over the place. So.
Mark, you're based here in Bakersfield, but as you say, you do work everywhere. Where are some of the places that you've taken your crews and built major things?
Pretty much up and down California, from San Diego, some in the Bay Area, out in the desert. We have one out by, like I say, Barstow right now. Also, I was privileged to work on a big housing project in Pearl Harbor, so with the Navy. So that was a lot of fun. Got to go over there a couple times. You didn't have to twist my arm too hard to do that. But after the Kobe earthquake, one of the companies here in town was doing overwork, and we consulted with them as well. So, so just a lot of fun and that type of thing.
When you did your work in Hawaii with the Navy, was that with the Navy Seabees? Because
similar,
they're the construction
what it was,
guys.
It was a housing project they were doing for the military, and what we were there was a local firm that was building a lot of we designed the panels and everything here for the walls and roof framing and everything.
Okay.
Here in town locally, it was built locally, all light gauge steel, and then put in cartons, transportation cartons, and then shipped over, and then we supervised the construction on site.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they have a big problem with termites over there, so everything had to be steel, pressure treated, to protect from the bugs, basically.
okay.
So it was a beautiful project.
My 2-year Navy reserve time, I was a CB,
Oh,
the
okay.
construction business of the Navy.
Who knew? I didn't know that, Tina.
Done.
No, it was a lot of fun. I mean,
Yeah.
just being on base and everything else was just wonderful. I mean, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
Tina, I want to tell you how I got to know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
We've got a little guest cottage out at our place, and it was built in the late 40s, and I mean everything kind of needed to be redone. And so we thought, well, we'll do it ourselves, save some money, and brought in a friend, and he started doing this and that. I'll tell you, the first visit by the planning inspector, we knew right off, boy, we need professional help here, and that's when we turned to Mark Pasquini. And Mark, I'll tell you, anymore, even in the smallest project, I mean, the planning departments can just tie you up in knots, and you're the guy that gets people through that. Tell us about
Yeah.
that, Mark.
Well, yeah, I mean, pretty much years ago, I mean, people think, and there is a mentality that, you could, draw a set of plans on the back of a napkin and go build it. That was kind of the old school thing. Now, pretty much, they're looking for professional designers on I won't say the smallest project, but anything that's not conventional, they're going to want an engineer on it, and not conventional gets into even small little houses anymore. So,
Tell you, I mean, it is the smallest project and the smallest details of projects, and you really do need professional help to get you through that.
Yes, yeah. So your business, would you say this is a great time for your business? Is it flourishing?
Well, with the real estate downturn 5 years ago, it's been tough, but we are seeing a little bit of a resurgence, and we've hired several people this year and trying to expand our business. So yeah, it's a good time right now.
Well, Mark, I've been over to your office. You're running out of office space over there,
Right,
and you've added a lot of things that you're doing. Noise. Tell us about some of those new things that you are now offer to.
We've brought in several employees, but also a geotechnical engineer that's working with us now, and also a land surveyor. So we have basically the ability to do a lot of the environmental type reporting, and then also we have a traffic engineer out of Fresno that's working with us as well. So the traffic studies, subdivisions, parcel maps, grading plans, geotechnical, soils reports. One of the latest things that's come out is that any septic sewer system where they used to have standard guidelines where you didn't need an engineer, now you're supposed to have an engineer test the soil before they put it in. And so that's been something over the recent months that we've had geared up with a couple of local companies that do that. So
Okay.
Well, Tina,
So-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask if he had anything else he wanted to share about his business before we get ready to
Well,
break.
what I can share about it is
Yes.
what I know about Mark is from a backyard patio to almost the biggest industrial project you've got. He can do that, but he really specializes in kind of those in-between things, don't you? Shop, sheds.
what we try to do for our customers is that one of the frustrations that I see with a lot of our customers is that they come in and, well, we need a designer for this, and we need a structural engineer for that, and a civil engineer for this, and electrical and plumbing and mechanical and all the different aspects. And that's what we've tried to do is come in and give them kind of a one-stop shop where we'll handle all those aspects for them in our office. So, from a small commercial building, medium, in some even large ones we do, and so that you'll get, if you have a lot that you want to build a small store on, let's say if there's a commercial building, you're going to need to do the road improvements, the grading, the building, the air conditioning, everything. We can pretty much take care of all that.
One-stop shop Pasquini. Listen, I'm going to put your website up here. There it is.
Yes.
Mark Pasquini. It's spelled with a C, and it's PasquiniEngineering.com. That's how you get in touch with Mark. Mark is right down here on 8th Street, right across from St. Francis Church. Really easy to find. And so, Mark, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Mark.
Pleasure
Thank
to be
you.
associated with you, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very
When
much.
we come back, the man who has led 3 dynamic and dramatically different lives as a drug thug, as an intelligence operative, and now as a magnificent transformer of the lives of ex-convicts.
a
We'll be
man
right
walking
back.
upright.
You bet. You bet.
We do our research.
We're shoppers.
I was hoping I could save money with Personal Express insurance.
We've had other quotes from other companies.
And in shopping around, it was the best price.
When she actually ran the numbers, I was shocked at the savings that I had.
I have checked around. Personal Express Insurance is less. They have great rates.
They're one of the lowest around that I've found.
Nobody can beat Personal Express Insurance.
Low rates with the local advantage. That's Personal Express.
Introducing TBC Mobile from the Bakersfield, California. The most complete news, sports, weather, video, opinion, and lifestyle coverage in Bakersfield and Kern County. It's the easiest way to stay up to date on all things local while on the go. Read it on your smartphone or tablet. Download now by searching Bakersfield Californian in the Apple, Google, and Amazon app stores.
Hi, Corey Costello here, host of Roadrunner Rundown Tuesdays at 10 a.m. here on Bakersfield.com. Join us this week. We'll talk about academic support for student athletes with Dina Freeman-Patton. Also, it's Thanksgiving week, so we'll talk Thanksgiving student athlete style. Maybe how to cook, maybe how you eat when you're on the road and playing basketball on Thanksgiving Day. So we'll talk about that this week, plus a new Corey Versus and all the runner highlights you can handle. That'll be Tuesday, 10 a.m. right here on Bakersfield.com.
Save 50 to 90% with the Bakersfield Californians Daily Deal featured on Bakersfield.com. A daily deal is offered each weekday on services from local restaurants, dry cleaners, health and beauty services, retail shops, and local activities for the entire family. The Daily Deal is 100% local. Find these amazing deals only at dailydeal.bakersfield.com.
Every morning, I get to come to work here. We talk about the news, we talk about the community, and most importantly, we have fun. You can listen to us live every morning from 7 to 10 on News Talk 1180 KERN, but you can also watch the video live at Bakersfield.com. You can't miss us because you can watch or listen live on your mobile device. Join us from 7 to 10 a.m. weekday mornings right here at News Talk 1180 KERN or at Bakersfield.com. Come have fun with us.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Open Up with Don and Tina, and we are being refreshed with our delicious drink from Nature's Food Market and Juice Bar. Chuck Noss stopped in earlier, and he brought us a tropical fruit with ginger. It is so delicious. Banana, strawberry, pineapple, papaya, mango, 100% pineapple juice concentrate. And it's delicious. Not too much sugar, though. So anyway, we're back, and thank you so very much for joining us. Don, are we ready?
Well, you're about to meet a young man named Fernando Jara, who has had 3 very different lives. First, I think in the most honest and accurate way is just to describe Fernando in his early life as a drug thug, and very much involved in the whole drug world, drug scene, and the criminality of all of that. And then came a time when he took that kind of street smarts and put it to work for our intelligence agencies and took that patriotic service over to the Middle East to try to find out what was going on over there, and ended up with his cover blown, as I understand it. We'll hear that story, but came back, and there's been an abandoned school outside Bakersfield quite a ways. I used to live out that way and drive past that school every day, going back and forth to work every day, way out in the country. It's all by itself. I sat there, and every day and every night I prayed, Lord, let this place be used for a good work. And they've taken it over. It's now called Rock Hill Farm. We're going to hear all about that. So here we go. Fernando, tell us about your early life, and tell us about what drew you in, as so many have been drawn into the drug world, what that was like.
Sure. I wouldn't call my own life a triple life or 3. I see it as one stream that has brought me to where I'm at today. And I don't know that I could say about my life that I was like brought into the world as much as it is and was the world in which I was born and was raised within. Like many persons within our community who grow up in some of the poorest areas and more socially and economically challenged areas within our community, that is the world in which you know. So being around kind of perpetual violence and perpetual tragedy within those communities was absolutely the norm for me growing up. And one of the things that are also part of that environment is the kind of gang and drug culture that is around there that is completely normal. So for myself, growing up in those areas, it is much different than, say, the kind of middle-class existence that myself and my wife and are raising our child within, where there are different kinds of expectations for our standard of life and our civil interaction, as well as the need to prepare our son to be able to exist in that world. For myself, growing up as a young person within these neighborhoods, my expectations were not to be a minister, a doctor, a lawyer, or anything like that. The expectations were to ultimately build reputation through acts of violence and through gaining notoriety for one's propensity for violence and violent defense of the place that we called our neighborhood.
Did you become that tough guy, that guy with the rep that everyone feared and knew? And
yeah, I did. I believe I did. I mean, certainly there were others who were much more violent than myself. I grew up during a period of time before there was a gang task force, which began in the early 90s. when not only Kern County, but California as a whole was experiencing some of the greatest kind of gang violences within our community that were ever experienced up until the development of law enforcement agencies that came in and really tackled that problem and brought us into a more stable, not stable, but more stable position today. And there were lots of friends of mine at the time who they're never coming home because of their acts of violence. And so for myself, I spent from my last full year of school was in the 6th grade, and then I was in and out of juvenile hall and eventually the California Youth Authority from that period until June 2nd, 1992, right before I turned 18. So for myself, I know nothing about what a prom is and what it means to graduate from high school or what it means to be a young person. I was basically raised by the institutions and raised within basically a gladiator environment in which when I came out, it seemed that my street smarts had been really sharpened, razor sharp, and that is certainly one of the characteristics that was seen as valuable for the next stage of my life.
Tell us about that institutional experience. Positive, negative. Is it all negative? Is it all just training better thugs? What's going on in those institutions?
I think that a lot of the employees who work at places like the California Youth Authority and other juvenile institutions legitimately care and do what they can to try to intervene in young persons' lives. I think the fundamental problem or hurdle with that is by the time children come in, they have been inundated with violence and tragedy to such an extent that overcoming that is not something that can be overcome in a year or two. It's something that will take not only decades of hard work on the part of the individual, but also it's going to take from the community an affirmative action on their part to reincorporate persons who attempt to pay some retribution and some demonstration of rehabilitation to be reincorporated back into the community. And those things don't necessarily match and they don't line up for everyone. So certainly for myself, I was one of very few, at least from my neighborhood growing up, that are no longer in that environment and live the way I live today. But when I think about, I was at a place they call the Castle, Preston School of Industry in the late 80s. And one of the places I was in for some time was a place called Tamarack, where I was 14 years old. It's basically solitary confinement, double-doored. So your meals, those doors never open to come out to play you, if you will. You're left with your underwear on and your T-shirt from 6 in the morning until the evening when your blankets are returned to you. And you have very little to do but pace that room. And even as I think about myself as an adult, that would be hard for me to deal with. But how I was able to overcome that as a young person and really not lose my sanity at that time was probably due to the kind of traumatic and violent preparation I had on the streets to do that. And so that's a very tough environment. That is a very violent environment.
I was going to ask, did you think that there was any hope for you of change at that age and during that time?
I don't think that for myself and for my friends who were in there at the time, that wasn't something that we thought about at all, the idea of becoming a better person. What we wanted to do was to be the most notorious persons within the institutions because acquired status within, say, the middle class, world is certainly education and the financial benefits that come with education and home ownership and so forth. But acquired status within that world are not those things. Those statuses are gained by violence and not just a courage against potential acts of violence against oneself, but also the almost the joy in which one faces the possibility of just being pulverized by other sides. So very racially divided within the institutions while I was there, very much divided along very clear lines of gang affiliation within those institutions, and very difficult, maybe impossible to stay unaffected by that. And so, yeah.
Tina, I want to remind our viewers that you can call in and ask questions
Yes.
for Fernando live on the air. We'll try to get those questions to you. We can put that up. It's 395-7386. There it is, 395-7386. Fernando, as in our past conversation, you pointed to a catalytic moment in your time when you were in prison. You were behind bars. You had all your defenses up. You had all your armor on, and some guy just came in and hugged you. And
that's right.
Tell us about
yes.
that.
That's right.
How that broke through.
Yeah, I was in Tamarack, and I can't remember now. Now it seems like I was there for decades, but I mean, who knows? It could have been weeks or months. I'm not sure. But I had been talking to myself, walking back and forth, which I did, and many other people did while they were there to occupy time. And I looked up, and there are these small windows with bars through them, through one of the doors. And I as I looked up talking to myself, I saw a pair of eyes and glasses on. And I just looked up, and I looked down, I looked up again, and they were gone. And I was sure at that moment, the way I remember it, that I felt my heart racing because I felt like I had reached a new low, like I was maybe snapping a little bit mentally and starting to see things.
Okay.
And so I had stopped talking kind of to myself and moved back, and I heard the doors unlock. And the first person I saw were, of course, the guards who wore these, what they call shank-proof vests. So they looked like Darth Vader or something with their kind of knife-resistant gear on as they came into that unit.
And you were 14 at this time?
Like 14 years old, 14
okay.
or 15. And in comes this small, today I think, I'm unsure if he was a priest. More and more I think that he may have been like an Episcopal priest or something, but he came
Hold on
in.
just a minute. Chris, we're going to go on for a few minutes here, so just hang with us. Go ahead.
Yeah, and he came in and he didn't say anything, but he started to weep, and he just put me in his arms and he hugged me and he just wept with me. And I began to weep as well. And so I didn't have very nice things to say to him when he came in. But it was a transforming period in my life, and it's one that I've never forgotten, and one in which I still practice today.
Were you small in stature?
I was a little tiny guy.
Oh.
Yeah, I must have been a $120 or something back then. I was a little guy.
Well, we're going to take from that moment, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about, and we're going to hear about how this transforming moment led on to the next phase of his life, this continuum, he calls it, a very different kind of direction, and then on to this fabulous work he's doing in his life right now. So stay with us, and be sure to call in if you want to. We'll be back.
Bakersfield Life magazine is a monthly lifestyle publication that features local people, places, and businesses. It is available to be read on bakersfieldlife.com and publishes the last Saturday of the month with many convenient pickup locations. Find us online on Facebook or Twitter, as well as bakersfieldlife.com.
Kern Business Journal contains news and information from local business leaders and organizations. Topics include agriculture, health and medical, energy, real estate, and more. Visit KernBusinessJournal.com to find out how to subscribe or where to pick up a free copy. To inquire about advertising in the bi-monthly business journal, call 395-7586. Find us online on Facebook and Twitter, as well as on KernBusinessJournal.com.
I'm Lisa Kirsch. Be sure to join us every Wednesday for Be Well Live. We'll cover the latest trends and health news featuring reporters from the Bakersfield Californian. Plus, special guests will stop by with news and health events. Plus, the editors of Be Well and Bakersfield Life magazines will be joining us to give us updates on what we can expect in those publications. Remember, Be Well Live every Wednesday from 10 to 11 o'clock right here on Bakersfield.com. You can also catch us on demand at BeWellMagazine.com.
Save 50 to 90% with the Bakersfield Californian's Daily Deal featured on Bakersfield.com. A daily deal is offered each weekday on services from local restaurants, dry cleaners, health and beauty services, retail shops, and local activities for the entire family. The daily deal is 100% local. Find these amazing deals only at dailydeal.bakersfield.com.
Every morning, I get to come to work here. We talk about the news, we talk about the community, and most importantly, we have fun. You can listen to us live every morning from 7 to 10 on News Talk 1180 KERN, but you can also watch the video live at Bakersfield.com. You can't miss us because you can watch or listen live on your mobile device. Join us from 7 to 10 a.m. weekday mornings right here at News Talk 1180 KERN or at Bakersfield.com. Come have fun with us.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Open Up with Don and Tina. We've been having some interesting conversation with our guest today. But before we move on back to him, I want to thank Denise Haddock for these beautiful decorations here. Denise Haddock with Denise Haddock Interior Designs. Thank you so much, Denise.
You bet.
All right, back to this interesting conversation here. Now, we left off with you talking about your life in the institution and your young age and being impacted by someone that looked like Darth Vader that come in there and give you this big warm hug.
That's right.
And then did that do anything for you at that time? Were you?
I think that's certainly what that interaction did for me. Is it made me very curious about faith and about religion, and about what compels somebody like that, who's obviously not from my world, to embrace and love deeply somebody who's never met, and somebody who at that time I felt was much more of an animal than a boy, much more of a savage than a civilized young man who should be at that time, at high school football games or going to prom.
Right.
And I have never forgotten that. And I tell that story even to the men that I work with today. I tell that story of that kind of lasting impact, that seed that was sowed within me as a young person.
Fernando, did that relationship with that man ever go beyond that, or was that just a one catalytic moment?
It was one moment, and of course I was too much of a tough guy at the time to reach out again. But I carried a small Bible that he had given me, probably for the better part of the next decade. Just had it, and
never read it.
Was a young man who had it, and it was much more symbolic for me at that time of that exchange.
I've done that before.
Of love, and I got to tell you, one of the truest statements I've ever heard. I think Francis of Assisi who said that is, preach the gospel to every creature, and if necessary, use words. And that's exactly what happened to me at that moment. Is that the gospel was preached to me without words, in pure love to me.
Yes. And so you have not had contact with him since then?
I would, no.
You'd probably love to.
It would be a very interesting moment to talk with him again, if that was possible.
If he could see you now.
He was a much older man then, and he certainly have rewards coming to him.
Yes.
In the life to come.
Fernando, I know you're restricted now in the subject we're going to move into, but what can you tell us about how this experience rolled on into your work in the intelligence community and your time in the Middle East on behalf of the U.S. intelligence community?
Sure. Yes. I think one of the things that has been very important in my life is the kind of mentorship that has taken place in my life. And some of the strongest mentors in my life in my early 20s, coming out of the Calvin Youth Authority, were local college professors. In particular, I hope he doesn't mind me saying it, but it's in the LA Times. So, Dr. Damon Johnson at Bakersfield College, and Dr. Jack Hernandez, who is now retired from Bakersfield College, but head of the Levine Center for the Humanities at Bakersfield College, were tremendous influences on me as I was trying to figure out my place in a world in which I was ill prepared for. Coming out basically as an adult out of the California Youth Authority with no childhood, I was such a savage when I came out. And these men, to this day, I don't understand why they put in the kind of work that they did, but they did, and studied history and philosophy with them. And I remember a particular date shortly after September 11th, when Professor Johnson was talking about the greatest generation. And when I was taking with him an American history class, and he talked about, at that time in the media, this kind of failure of the intelligence community, and to a great extent as well, the special operations community, in being able to recruit both Arab Americans and Arabic-speaking Americans to engage in a war that, at that time, we were figuring out how to fight at that time. And I had a background in both because of my connections with the Arab community and with the Muslim community. I'd studied some Arabic and had been very interested in Islam in the pre-9/11 period. And I think for a time, I thought that might have been a lifestyle that I would have continued with. September 11th changed that for many of us who were dabbling in that religion at that time. And I remember hearing this conversation that Damon was having, basically preaching in the classroom. And I don't know what got into me as a young person, but I walked down to the downstairs computer room, and I typed out these emails to the intelligence community and gave my background. And forgot about it. And there are two things that are important about this. Number one, had I done that at any other period of time, there is no way that application would have been taken serious.
Right.
But something was emerging at that particular time that made me a potential candidate. And that is that it was being recognized very quickly in the beginning of the War on Terror that our traditional intelligence officers are highly identifiable by the other side. Because they have not only a weapons training that is identifiable, the way they hold their weapon and the way they fight, but their way of being trained in language, as well as the way they look. Many of our best intelligence agents and special operations soldiers are coming from the Midwest or from the East Coast. Many of them are Caucasian Americans, and we're fighting in an area that is that needs some diversity in the way in which people look to be able to blend in.
And were you speaking Arabic at this time?
I wouldn't say so. I certainly had. Now that I speak Arabic, I would say I didn't know anything about it, but I was at least able at that moment to get a contact back a couple of months later from, and I thought somebody was playing a trick on me because I got a call back and they said, Fernando Jara? I said, yes. And they said, you contacted us. And I said, who is this? And there was a silence for a moment, and then I heard, you know who this is. And so began my journey within this within this world. And it isn't just an individual happening, and this is kind of very difficult to explain for persons outside of the intelligence world, is that I was recruited from individual programs. So the initial program that I was recruited to be involved in, which was to look at was to keep an eye on bad guys.
Okay.
Eventually caused me, because I think of how well I was doing in adapting to that environment, it caused me to be recruited into other programs that took me overseas. And so I remember having met with one person from a much smaller sub-branch of our intelligence community who had came and brought a big file of me. And I remember seeing the pictures of my YA pictures within the file. And I remember one of the things that he had said is that, or we had talked about, was my time in solitary confinement and my upbringing within the inner city. And I didn't know then what I don't know now about that preparation was that two things. The kind of third world Middle Eastern world is very much looks very similar to the kind of world, the kind of social world in which I was raised. It is very violent. It is rife with kind of criminal activities that are taking place in there, and rife with the kind of behaviors that poverty poverty bring.
Okay.
But my reason, I think, for being recruited at that time was that the intelligence community under the Bush administration began to have these ideas of what if we attempt to recruit persons who look like alienated Americans who would be recruitable by the other side. So if you will, persons like Johnny Walker and other persons who had been recruited by the other side and were looking for pathways to be involved in jihad. What if we were able to artificially create that and get them recruited to the other side? And I kind of fit this kind of mold, and to a great extent, before being mentored by the professors who took me under their wing, I would have been an ideal candidate for a recruiter to come after me.
Fernando, we've got about 2 minutes left
Sure.
on this. Tell us about how it became too dangerous for you to be there anymore.
I think what it ends up happening is the more that you're involved in this kind of world, the higher one's profile gets. Because eventually you're the last man standing, if you will, as things begin to happen to other persons. As persons are arrested, as persons are no longer around, eyes begin to turn to the last few who are around. And I remember this very interesting moment in which I was sitting in a circle of extremists, and some of them recruiters who were sending mujahideen into Iraq and other places, and they were talking about having been penetrated, and that they need to figure out a way to find who it is. And I was angry about it because I was playing my role, and we began to discuss it. How do we find this person who's ultimately picking off our guys? And it was somewhere within 5 or 6 minutes of that conversation that I realized we were all talking about me at that moment. That playing my role there, I was playing that role so well that I too was angry that somebody had penetrated us, if you will, and was giving advice about how to capture that person, and that person was me in the midst of it.
And you so got out right then.
It was very difficult to get out. The story will be in a movie coming up. So we are in the final stages of finishing the contract for it.
Who plays you?
It looks like Michael Pena is going to play me.
Okay.
And so the writing of it is beginning, and we'll show it here in Bakersfield, and you'll be the first two to come see it.
Well, thank you very much.
Right here in Bakersfield.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, we need to take a break.
Yes.
We'll be back. And then this amazing life goes on. I mean, it goes on to the incredible things he's doing now in bringing people out of the world that he grew up in. And
Yes.
so we'll be right back. Movie.
Introducing TBC Mobile from the Bakersfield, California. The most complete news, sports, weather, video, opinion, and lifestyle coverage in Bakersfield and Kern County. It's the easiest way to stay up to date on all things local while on the go. Read it on your smartphone or tablet. Download now by searching Bakersfield Californian in the Apple, Google, and Amazon app stores. Kern Business Journal contains news and information from local business leaders and organizations. Topics include agriculture, health and medical, energy, real estate, and more. Visit KernBusinessJournal.com to find out how to subscribe or where to pick up a free copy. To inquire about advertising in the bi-monthly business journal, call 395-7586. Find us online on Facebook and Twitter, as well as on KernBusinessJournal.com.
I'm Lisa Kirsch. Be sure to join us every Wednesday for Be Well Live. We'll cover the latest trends and health news featuring reporters from the Bakersfield Californian. Plus, special guests will stop by with news and health events. Plus, the editors of Be Well and Bakersfield Life magazines will be joining us to give us updates on what we can expect in those publications. Remember, Be Well Live every Wednesday from 10 to 11 o'clock right here on Bakersfield.com. You can also catch us on demand at BeWellMagazine.com.
Save 50 to 90% with the Bakersfield Californian's Daily Deal featured on Bakersfield.com. A daily deal is offered each weekday on services from local restaurants, dry cleaners, health and beauty services, retail shops, and local activities for the entire family. The Daily Deal is 100% local. Find these amazing deals only at dailydeal.bakersfield.com.
every morning I get to come to work here. We talk about the news, we talk about the community, and most importantly, we have fun. You can listen to us live every morning from 7 to 10 on News Talk 1180 KERN, but you can also watch the video live at Bakersfield.com. You can't miss us because you can watch or listen live on your mobile device. Join us from 7 to 10 a.m. weekday mornings right here at News Talk 1180 KERN or at Bakersfield.com. Come have fun with us.
Hi again to our viewers around the country and all over California. You know, several of the things that we do here at Open Up that are a little different. One, we give any business the opportunity to come in, not just for a 30-second commercial or a 60-second commercial, but to sit for an entire segment. Just tell the world, like Mark Pasquini did, about your business and what you do, and be our sponsor for that show. And then we have something, and then we're going to start a thing called Open Forum, where we're going to devote a segment to come in, and if there's something that's kind of been on your craw, you know, something under your saddle that you want the world to know about, we're going to give you the opportunity to say that. But we also have something called Good Words for the Coming Week, and we open that up for anybody in Kern County or around the area who'd just like to come in and share a good word, an uplifting word, encouraging, inspiring, maybe a gentle challenge. And today we're really glad to have one of our leading businessmen here in Bakersfield, Don Coons, who is just a great guy. And coming up on Thanksgiving, I think Don has a word to say about discipline. Don?
Well, thank you, Don. Man, I really am enjoying being here in the studio with Don and Tina and Fernando, and I can't wait to hear the rest of your testimony, Fernando. It sounds like you're a modern-day Joseph. I mean, this is awesome. The reason I'm here today is a couple of weeks ago, Don stopped by my office, and we were talking, and I was just sharing some of the things that were happening in my life. And I told him about something that happened a month or so ago. I study a lot. I sort of study human nature. I study the Bible. I pray. I ask God for wisdom. I ask for, the Bible says, ask God for wisdom, and if you lack it, He'll give it to you freely. And I do that every day. I ask for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And one of the things that popped out at me about a month ago as I was studying Proverbs, it was Proverbs 12:27. Now, if I asked 10 theologians what was man's precious possession, what does the Bible say is man's precious possession? I bet you not one of those theologians could tell me. But Proverbs 12:27 says, discipline is man's precious possession. And I mentioned that to Don, and he said, wow, that's pretty interesting. And we talked about it for a little while. And he said, would you like to go on and share about that? And I said, I guess, But it's kind of interesting because it has a lot to do with how my life has changed in the last several years. A couple of years ago, I was doing a checkup with on my heart, and everything was fine. And although they did find a problem, I did a CT scan, and I had done one 7 years before, and I did one just a year and a half ago, and they saw that I was making plaque. And the cardiologist told me, he said, Don, he says, if you don't change something, he says, in 10 years, I'm going to be putting stents in you, or I'm going to be opening you up, and we're going to be doing bypass surgery. And it really scared me. So I thought, okay, I get it. So I really got serious in with my health. And I started really eating correctly. I got a trainer. Well, I started walking with my wife. I really got serious with my health, and I brought discipline into my life there. I lost 40 pounds. A year later, I went and did the testing with the cardiologist, and he just couldn't believe the blood work and how it had changed. And he told me that I'd completely reversed the problem that I had, and that he really felt like I was on a great track. And then I started doing that, the discipline in the rest of my life. And I started seeing that I'm 62 years old, and as we go along, a lot of us have worked very hard in our lives, but maybe when you get a little bit older, you're able to stop and you're able to prioritize your life. And so I've been doing that in the last year. So actually now the way my life works is my work day for today started last night about 9:30. Because that's when we went to bed. Because discipline is not about getting up early in the morning. It's about going to bed early enough at night. So that's when the discipline starts. And then we get up at 5:30, and then I prioritize what's the most important thing to me. It's spending time with God. So I spend time in prayer. And then I read. I spend time in His Word. And then my wife and I go out and walk 30 minutes. And then we come home, and I go to work. And then a couple of times a week I work out with a trainer. So when I read this, and I read this, discipline is man's precious possession, I thought, Lord, that is so neat how you've shown me that. And what God has shown me is that we all need a path. We are all on a path. And if we want to get to a certain destination, we have to be on the right path, and we have to be doing the right things on that path. And one really big attribute of what we're going to be, what's going to make us successful on that path is discipline.
So much. That's exactly what I wanted Don to share with us. And what a
yes.
boy, it's
Discipline.
challenging for all of us,
Oh,
isn't it?
yes. I like that word discipline.
I mean, you've done that and lost so much weight, and you're looking great and feeling great.
Thank you,
and
Don.
I've seen that. And
20 pounds.
I guess
Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's up to
Didn't
me.
lose it, got rid of it.
Back to Fernando
Yes.
Jara. Fernando, before we leave the intelligence work that you were a part of, psychologists say that double agents, whether it's undercover agents in the drug world, they take on the mind can't distinguish between fantasy and reality, and they become what they're playing. It becomes dangerous to keep them in that role. Did that happen to you?
I would say that is a significant portion of what happened to me, and that is, in order to be good at doing intelligence work, what is required is one to give one's self away entirely to the character that one plays, so that it isn't anymore a role that is being played, but it is part of one's identity that one takes onto themselves. And so for myself, that meant living not 2 lives, but 3. One, the life that allows me to live there as a student in the environment. The other being living as an anti-American Muslim. And the other is my actual identity as an intelligence operative working for the United States government in order to take down Al-Qaeda cells.
Well, Fernando, we've got 5 minutes left, and there's a whole new chapter of your life going on at that once abandoned school out at Wheeler Ridge and David Road, way out there in the country. Amazing things happening out there. Tell us about it.
Sure. I think 5 years ago, or now actually longer, 6 years ago coming home, I certainly had a struggle getting back on my feet and figuring out how to rejoin civil society. And Rock Hill, to a great extent, was the answer to that, and that is my father-in-law, who's a senior pastor here in town. That church had a 5-acre plot that they were doing rehabilitation work on for men within the gang and drug community. And with that, I got involved in that and fell in love with the men that were there, because I began to see the same kind of trauma within their lives from growing up within the neighborhoods and spending time in prison, with the same kind of trauma that I had received going through war, basically. And so at least from here, because of both our exposure to these kind of violent backgrounds, we built a brotherhood, Rock Hill. And so we expanded, so we're on a 10-acre plot. We grow our own vegetables. We sell them at farmers markets to provide the leisure time necessary to do what is our passion, and that is to do theology and do biblical studies. So part of my own education, as I came back and finished at Cal State Bakersfield, completed my Master's of Divinity at Claremont School of Theology with my emphasis in biblical literature, in particular New Testament. And this is the way in which I train the men almost every single day, is we spend hours and hours, as we just heard a minute ago, as a discipline. We don't do Bible studies. We practice a discipline, which requires us hours every day to engage the text and engage each other with the text, so that what we have now are, at least within the community of Claremont, we've raised up some legendary characters at Rock Hill Farm, who I would put them against any seminary graduate with with the payout that has come from the years that they have spent disciplined over that training.
Tina, there's a
Yeah.
wonderful story of a professor that came and was giving lecture to them, and when he was done, the guy said, "Is that all you got?"
That's
We already know all that stuff.
So we had, yeah,
I know. And Don, the name of this farm is Rock Hill.
that's right.
How did that come about? Because I can identify with Rock Hill. That's the name of the city I was born in.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we found is the small 3-acre plot that we were trying to clean up in the initial facility was full of concrete.
Oh.
And so myself and Nick, who is here with me, and others who were part of that initial program, we went out with sledgehammers and we started breaking up all the concrete inside of that field and dragging it out of the mud by hand, pile after pile. And it's still alongside the road there. And the name came from that 2 or 3 week period where all we did was bust concrete up with sledgehammers and drag it out of the field. And it has become part of our discipline for our life now. Hard work, rebuilding.
Well, Fernando, I'll tell you what, we will have you back. As you said at the break, there is so much more to talk about, and we want to hear it.
And
we
see
want
the
to hear
movie,
it from
too.
you. We want you to bring actor Michael Pena here on the set.
I'll
Let's
ask
talk to
Michael.
him as that movie becomes close and comes
Sure.
to reality
Yes.
about your life. And we'll probably have the premiere right here in Bakersfield.
That would be great.
We
Yes.
certainly want to thank Mark Pasquini for coming
Yes,
on and telling
yes.
the world about
Thank
what he
you,
can
Mark.
do for any project that you've got going out there. Thanks to Don Coons,
Yes, Don.
wonderful thoughts
Thank you.
for the coming week, actually for our coming lives, if we want to live at our
Totally.
best for the longest. So we really appreciate Don coming on.
Yes,
Uh,
discipline.
And
saying hi to our friends and viewers in China and Spain
Amazing.
and
Amazing.
Nicaragua and so many other places. And also, let me say, Ginger Brewer with In Your Wildest Dreams at 1723 18th Street is collecting 1,000 cans for kids. And they're being given to the children at the Bethany House, Bethany Center in our community. So if you can get down to 1723 and drop off a 10 canned goods, and give it to Ginger, she'd love that.
happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving to you. We'll see you next time.